Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling Surah Al-Asr.
It's a good one.
It is, right? It's this super short chapter in the Qur'an, but man, is it ever packed with meaning. I think a lot of our listeners probably already know it.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, it's famous for having this powerful message about how to live a good life, meaningful life. But what really blew my mind when I was prepping for this?
What's that?
It's how much debate there is about something as basic as where the surah came from.
Yeah, that's true. There's actually a lot of back and forth between scholars
Right.
about whether it was revealed in Mecca or Medina. It's kind of like this little mystery right at the start.
Adds to the intrigue for sure. Okay, so let's just dive right in. The first verse starts out, by the time Allah's, that opening, it just grabs you right away.
Oh, for sure.
It's almost like what's about to come next is super important.
Definitely.
But it's that word, Allah's.
Yeah,
that
yeah.
seems to be the real head scratcher, right?
It is. Because, how many ways can you really interpret time?
Yeah, it seems pretty straightforward.
You'd think so. But, Tafsir al-Mizan.
Which is?
Oh, right, sorry. It's a prominent Shia commentary on the Quran. Anyway, in Tafsir al-Mizan, it actually outlines 5 totally different ways to understand what al-Asr means.
Okay, now I get to hear this.
Right. Okay, so first up, you got the, just straightforward historical view.
Keeping it simple.
Exactly. So al-Asr refers to the time when the Prophet Muhammad was alive, highlighting how crucial that time period was.
Makes sense.
But then there's this other idea that al-Asr is actually talking about the late afternoon.
Like the time of day.
Yeah, that specific part of the day. And some people think it's even more specific, like the time for Asr prayer.
Oh, okay. So it's kind of a call to be mindful, but about a very particular part of the day. That's an interesting take.
Right. And then things get even more symbolic. Al-Asr could also represent just time in general, time as a whole.
Like, wow, okay, this huge, unstoppable force.
Exactly. God's creation just marching on.
Yeah, and that kind of connects to the whole idea of human life being fleeting and, super precious, right?
Absolutely. It definitely plays into that theme. But wait, there's more.
2 more.
2 more. Some scholars, they link Al-Asr to the time when Imam Mahdi is supposed to appear.
Oh, interesting. For those who might not know, can you give a super quick?
Oh, right, yeah. In Islamic thought, Imam Mahdi is this figure who, everyone's waiting for. He's supposed to come and bring justice to the whole world.
So in that interpretation, the time becomes, almost messianic, tied to this future hope.
Precisely. And then last but not least, there's the idea that Al-Asr really refers to the Asr prayer itself.
Okay, full circle back to the prayer.
Right. And they see it as this, super important point in the day. A time to reflect and connect with God.
I gotta say, I never would have guessed that one little word could have so much packed into it.
I know, right?
It's like we're meant to really think about all these different angles and figure out what resonates with us.
Yeah, that's what's so awesome about the Quran, right? It invites us to understand things on all these different levels.
So I guess with all that in mind, how do we even approach the next verse?
It's a doozy.
It's a heavy hitter, for sure. It says, "Indeed, mankind is in loss." Whoa! Talk about a change in tone.
Yeah, it gets real, real fast.
It does. So, okay, what does this loss really mean? We talking missing out on money? Or
it's actually way deeper than that. It's not just about material stuff. This verse is talking about your fundamental state of being.
Yeah.
If we aren't careful, we can totally lose sight of why we're here, our connection to God. We can just waste all this precious time we've been given.
So it's like failing to live up to your potential, but not just in a career sense, but spiritually.
Exactly. And I think what's really interesting here is that it doesn't say some of mankind is in loss. It's all of humanity. Everyone. Unless, and that takes us right to the next verse where we're going to find out who gets to escape this ultimate loss. Who are the exceptions to the rule?
Right. I'm on the edge of my seat. What's the secret to not ending up lost?
Well, verse 3, it lays out 4 things you got to do, 4 conditions for success, you could say.
Okay, hit me with it.
So it says you got to have belief, you got to do good deeds, you got to advise each other to the truth, and you got to advise each other to be patient.
Okay, whoa, that's a lot to unpack. So obviously belief is a biggie here, but what does it really mean to believe, in the context of this surah?
Right, good question. So in Islam, belief, which is called iman, it's not just head knowledge, just agreeing with something in your brain. It's this deep down conviction that should like, affect everything you do in life.
Oh, I see.
It's about believing in God, believing in his messengers, and believing in the day of judgment.
So you're saying it's not enough to just say you believe?
Yeah. You gotta actually walk the walk. Your actions have to show it.
Which I guess brings us to that second condition. Righteous deeds.
Yes. In Arabic, it's amal salih. It means doing stuff that's in line with God's will, actions that benefit yourself and other people.
Gotcha.
And this is where the idea of life as capital comes in. It's this concept that our deeds are like investments.
Investment.
Yeah. Like what we do with our lives determines whether we're going to like profit or lose in the end, in the grand scheme of things.
I'm seeing a theme here.
What's that?
This idea of investing time. Right from the beginning with that oath by Al-Asr.
Yeah.
It's like time itself is a witness to everything we do.
You got it. Every single moment we have is a chance to like invest in what really matters.
Okay, so then we get to those last two conditions, which I think are super interesting. Advising each other to truth and advising each other to patience. It almost seems like there's this built-in emphasis on community, on shared responsibility.
Oh, absolutely. It's like we're not meant to do this alone. We're supposed to uplift each other,
Oh.
to help each other out. Advising each other to the truth, it means like actively promoting justice. It means standing up for what's right. And it means encouraging each other to live in a way that's genuine.
So it's about building this whole culture where truth can, actually flourish, both on a personal level and, as a whole society.
Exactly. And then there's the whole concept of advising each other to have patience. And, what's really interesting is that it's mentioned twice in the surah.
Like back to back.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that repetition, it's significant. It shows just how important patience is, especially when you're facing challenges or when you're trying to stand up for what's right.
So you're saying patience isn't just about, gritting your teeth and putting up with stuff. It's like this active, shared commitment to supporting each other, through the good times and the bad.
You got it. And that's where the different types of patience come into play.
Oh, different types.
It's kind of cool how this surah, Surah Al-Asr, it doesn't just tell us to be patient.
Yeah.
It specifically says to advise each other to be patient. And it makes me think about how important community is, especially when things get tough and you really need that patience.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's like having this built-in support system. But you mentioned there are different types of patience.
I did.
So what are those exactly?
Well, Islamic thought lays out three main types. You got patience in obeying God.
Okay.
You got patience in abstaining from things he's forbidden.
Gotcha.
And then you got patience during those trials and tribulations, the tough times.
So it's not just about gritting and bearing it, right? You're saying it's about making sure your patience actually lines up with your faith and your values.
You got it. It's way more intentional than just toughing it out. So patience and obedience, that means staying strong, committed to following God's commands, even when it's hard.
Even when you'd rather do something else?
Exactly. It's about staying the course even when you're tempted to stray.
Like sticking to your principles, even when it's hard.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Then you have patience in avoiding sin. This is all about resisting those temptations, the things that could lead you astray.
So it's about willpower.
Yeah, willpower, self-control, discipline. Staying true to your moral compass, you could say.
Okay, I'm following. And then, what was that last one? Patience during...
Trials and tribulations. It's the big one. This is about facing those challenges in life, the stuff everyone goes through, but doing it with, grace and strength. It's about trusting that God has a plan, even when things are really hard.
Yeah, I think everyone can relate to that one.
Yeah.
It's not even just about faith, it's just life, period. Life throws curveballs, and it's about how we react,
I agree. And, that concept of collective responsibility that we were talking about earlier in Surah Al-Asr, it adds another layer to this.
So?
Well, it's we're not meant to face those trials alone. Remember that whole thing about advising each other to patience?
Yeah.
That becomes so powerful in those moments, It's about supporting each other when things get tough.
It's like having people there to remind you to stay strong, to keep the faith, to remember that things will get better eventually.
Exactly. It's about drawing strength from each other, sharing what you've learned, encouraging each other when someone's struggling.
Man, I'm really starting to see how all this stuff fits together. Faith, good deeds, advising each other to truth, advising each other to patience. It's not just some abstract ideas, right? They're really practical tools for navigating life, and for building a better world.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's why Surah Al-Asr, even though it's so short, it's just so profound, so timeless. It really lays out a blueprint for living a life that's meaningful for ourselves as a community.
It's a reminder that we have a choice in how we spend our time, how we treat each other, and how we contribute to the world. But it's also saying that we don't have to do it all alone.
Yeah.
We can lean on each other for support, for guidance, to lift each other up.
That's what community is all about, right? It's about amplifying each other's efforts so we can achieve things that we could never do by ourselves.
It's interesting to think about that concept of exclusive salvation that we touched on earlier.
Yeah.
If it's really true that only the people who embody these four conditions are saved, it really makes you think about the importance of helping others, not just focusing on our own personal growth, but reaching out and supporting other people on their journey.
That's such a great observation. It's like, we got to move past just thinking about ourselves. We got to actually contribute to the well-being of the whole community.
It's like that saying, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others.
I love that.
It seems like Surah Al-Asr kind of echoes that sentiment,
Absolutely. It's about realizing that we're all connected, that what we do as individuals affects way more than just ourselves.
What are, the key things our listeners should take away? What's the core message of Surah Al-Asr?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we're all accountable for how we spend our time and what we do with it. The surah is urging us to invest in what truly matters. Faith, good deeds, and supporting each other in truth and patience. And it's telling us that those things, they're not separate. They're all connected, They're all part of a meaningful life.
And it shows how powerful community is, right? We can lean on each other for support and encouragement while we're figuring all this out, going through the ups and downs of life.
Yeah, perfectly said. And, at its heart, Surah Al-Asr is a message of hope. It acknowledges that we might experience loss, but it gives us the tools to overcome it and come out stronger, more connected to what really matters.
I like that you frame it as a message of hope, It's not all doom and gloom. It's about, having the power to make things better, to see the possibilities. But I also think it's a call to action. It's not enough to just agree with these ideas. We got to actually live them out.
I couldn't agree more. It's not just something to admire from a distance. It's a blueprint for how we should live. We got to take those principles, faith, good deeds, truth, and patience, and weave them into our lives, make them real.
And I think that's the perfect way to transition to the last part of our deep dive. We've talked about the meaning of Surah Al-Asr and why it's so important. But how do we actually put all this into practice in our everyday lives?
Yeah, let's get practical.
I'm ready. What advice do you have for our listeners about how to actually live out the message of this amazing surah?
Okay, so we've gone deep, right? We've explored all this wisdom in Surah Al-Asr, but now it's how do we actually live it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It is. It's easy to feel inspired, get all fired up. But then, actually making it part of your everyday life, that's the real challenge.
It definitely takes effort, being mindful, making conscious choices. But I think the surah gives us some hints.
Oh, yeah.
Remember how it keeps talking about advising each other?
Yeah.
It's not just about, saying the right words. It's about actually creating a space, an environment where these values can thrive.
So it's about, who you surround yourself with.
100%. Think about your community, your mentors, your friends, even online groups. Find those places where these values are actually being lived out, discussed.
Yeah, where people are walking the walk.
Exactly. That shared commitment, it makes a world of difference. It keeps you accountable, keeps you inspired.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about when we mess up? We're human. We're going to slip up sometimes.
Right. And that's where those different types of patience come in, big time.
Maybe.
So say you're struggling with obedience, right?
Yeah.
Remember that it's a journey. It's about progress.
Yeah.
Ask for forgiveness, recommit to those values, and just keep moving forward.
Keep trying.
Exactly. And it's the same with resisting temptation. The world is full of distractions. It's so easy to get pulled off track.
Oh, tell me that. Social media, streaming, it's endless.
Right. And that's where remembering the time is capital thing can be super helpful.
Oh, yeah.
Before you dive into something, ask yourself, is this how I want to spend my time? Does this align with what I believe in, what I'm trying to achieve?
I like that. Like a little mental checklist before you make a choice.
Right. And then, of course, there are those curveballs.
Of the curveball.
Things you just can't control in life. That's when patience during trials becomes the ultimate test. And honestly, that's when your community becomes even more important. Don't be afraid to lean on those people. The ones who can offer support, who can give you a new perspective.
Yeah, the people who remind you that it's not all on your shoulders.
Exactly. And don't forget to seek guidance from those who've been through similar things.
Yeah, people who've come out on the other side.
They've got wisdom to share. They can remind you of God's mercy, that you're not alone.
That's so important, that feeling of not being alone. But sometimes, even with all that support, those trials really test your faith. You can feel like.
That's too much.
Yeah, like you're going to break.
In those moments, remember the power of repetition.
Repetition.
Yeah. Think about how the surah keeps saying to advise each other to patience. It doesn't just say it once.
Right, right.
There's a reason for that. Sometimes you need to hear it over and over to really let it sink in,
To let it strengthen you.
Exactly.
And you know what? Maybe that repetition is also a reminder for ourselves.
What do you mean?
Like, we need to keep reminding ourselves to be patient, to keep the faith, even when it feels impossible.
You're so right. It's like a mantra.
Yeah.
Surah Al-Asr is all about resilience. It acknowledges that loss is a part of life. It happens.
Yeah.
But it also gives us the tools to get through it, to come out stronger, more connected to what truly matters.
It's like a guidebook, but not just for, surviving. It's for thriving, for living a life that's full of meaning, full of purpose.
100%. And it's a guidebook for everyone. It doesn't matter your background, your beliefs. These values, faith, good deeds, truth, patience, they're universal. Everyone can benefit from them.
Yeah, it's about what makes us human, right? What makes us want to build a better world.
Exactly. And Surah Al-Asr just lays it out so simply, so powerfully.
It's a call to action, an invitation to really live intentionally.
Yeah.
To make each moment count.
I love that.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's all carry that message with us.
Let's do it.
Let's be mindful of our time. Let's use it wisely, invest it in things that matter, and let's support each other on this crazy journey called life.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Thanks for joining us on this exploration of Surah Al-Asr.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep inspiring each other.